My name is Ethan Miller, and people in the entertainment industry call me the guy who walked away from Hollywood's brightest star as if she was nothing, but the truth is far uglier than the headlines ever dared to print, because behind the flashy covers and gossip blogs was me, a young actor who was just about to step into the spotlight, terrified that one wrong move could end my entire career before it even started. And Emily Carter, the woman who used to be mine, the woman who owned every room she walked into, the woman whose smile had once made me feel like I could take on the whole damn world, and yet I let her go, or maybe she let me go, because depending on how you look at it, we both walked away but for reasons that still gnaw at my chest late at night when the city is too quiet for excuses, and I remember how it all began, not on a movie set, not at some orchestrated dinner party, but in the middle of a crowded gala in Beverly Hills where my agent Rebecca Sloan was dragging me from one handshake to another, telling me to look presentable, telling me to smile like I meant it, telling me to never let my personal life interfere with my image, and that was when I saw her, sitting at the edge of the hall in a backless silver dress that looked like liquid starlight poured over her shoulders, shivering because the heating was terrible and the December wind of Los Angeles snuck in through the tall glass doors. And even though she wasn't yet the Hollywood queen that people would later call her, there was something about the way her peach blossom eyes drifted lazily over the crowd before landing on the floor that made my heart thud against my ribs like a drum, and when she looked up and caught me staring, I did what any rookie actor with a reputation to protect would do, I glanced away like she hadn't just knocked the air out of me, but then her voice, clear and a little amused, cut through the noise, "Hey, lend me your coat," and before I could remember Rebecca's warning about scandals, I was already shrugging off my black suit jacket and placing it gently over her shoulders, and I swear to God my pulse was racing so hard I thought the entire gala could hear it, because Emily Carter, even then, wasn't just beautiful, she was devastating, the kind of beauty that makes you believe in myths, the kind of presence that makes you forget who you are. And while she sat there in my coat like a goddess disguised as a tired starlet, I felt my resolve start to crumble, and I told myself it was just one night, just one kindness, no cameras around, no rumors to follow us, nothing more, but when she smiled faintly and whispered a thank you, I already knew I was screwed. It didn't take long after that, because the universe, or maybe fate, decided that we should keep running into each other, sometimes at another party, sometimes in the same hotel corridor, sometimes in places where no one else seemed to exist but us. And little by little, I let her into my life, even when Rebecca barked at me to stay away, warning me that Emily had a reputation for leaving broken hearts and burning bridges, that she wasn't the kind of woman I could afford to love, not with my career about to take off, but love has a way of making even the smartest man stupid, and one night, after a music festival, she knocked on my door, her cheeks flushed, her eyes glittering like she'd had too much champagne, and she said it straight. Without hesitation, "Ethan, be my boyfriend," and maybe she was drunk, maybe she would have taken it back the next morning, but I wasn't about to give her that chance. I said yes before my brain even caught up, and when I kissed her that night, when I tasted the sweetness of her lips mixed with that intoxicating woody perfume she always wore, I knew there was no turning back. We started a secret romance that lived in the shadows, hidden from paparazzi, hidden from the industry, a love that existed only between late-night texts, stolen kisses, and the safety of closed doors, and I told myself it was enough, that keeping it private would protect both of us, but the truth was that I was selfish, terrified that if anyone found out, my career would crash before it even got off the ground, and Emily, despite her rising fame, seemed content to keep me in her world of whispers and half-truths, but if I'm being honest, she had this spoiled streak, this way of pulling me into her orbit whether I wanted to or not, and I let her. Gladly, because even when she pushed my buttons, even when she teased me until I was fuming, I couldn't resist her, but everything beautiful comes with a shadow, and the beginning of the end started on Valentine's Day, the day I thought I'd surprise her by showing up early, by sneaking into her apartment in one of those dumb cosplay outfits she always joked about, planning to make her laugh and melt into my arms like she used to, but when I walked through that door, my world shattered in one cruel instant, because there she was, laughing too sweetly, leaning too close to Ryan Kim, a rising young actor whose name was already climbing the charts, and even though she tried to brush it off, introducing him as a friend, saying he just stopped by to grab something, I saw the way his eyes lingered on her, I saw the way she held on to his arm when she should have been holding on to mine, and the jealousy, the betrayal, it exploded out of me before I could control it, and I shouted, "Emily, you're cheating on me," my voice cracking, my heart tearing. And the way she froze, the way she frowned at me with irritation instead of guilt, it broke me in ways I can't even put into words, because she didn't run after me when I stormed out, she didn't chase me down the hallway or call me back into her arms, and as the elevator doors closed on her apartment, I caught a glimpse of my swollen, tear-stained eyes in the mirror and knew something inside me had just died. Rebecca scolded me that night, told me I was a fool, that getting tangled up with Emily Carter would only end in pain, and for the first time, I believed her, because no matter how much I wanted to forgive Emily, no matter how much my heart screamed that there was more to the story, I couldn't erase the image of her smiling with another man on the very night I planned to show her how much she meant to me, and maybe that's why, when the rumors started swirling, when the tabloids plastered her face next to Ryan Kim's and speculated about a secret Valentine's dinner, I didn't defend her, I didn't speak up, I let the silence build a wall between us, and maybe that was the biggest mistake of my life, because silence can kill faster than lies, and before I knew it, Emily Carter was no longer my girlfriend, she was my ex, and I was left standing in the ruins of a love I thought would last forever, pretending to the world that I was the one who left her, that I was the one who chose ambition over love, when in reality, I was just the coward who couldn't tell where the truth ended and the lies began. After that Valentine's Day disaster, nothing was ever the same, because once a crack forms in the glass, no matter how much you pretend it's fine, it's only a matter of time before it shatters completely, and that's exactly what happened with me and Emily Carter, the woman I loved more than I wanted to admit. I told the world I had dumped her because I didn't want a scandal to ruin my career, but the truth was uglier. It was her who walked away from me that night without a single word of comfort, and me, too prideful, too wounded to chase her, so I let the silence grow until it swallowed everything, and when the tabloids caught photos of her and Ryan Kim leaving a fancy restaurant together, the internet went wild, hashtags about their secret romance started trending, and every gossip account acted like I was just a stepping stone, a nameless extra in the background of the Emily Carter show. And even though Rebecca Sloan told me to stay quiet, to focus on my career, to act like I didn't care, I couldn't stop scrolling through Twitter, couldn't stop watching the comments pile up, couldn't stop feeling my chest tighten every time I saw her smile next to his, because that smile used to be mine, and now it was free for everyone to see, free for every stranger to dissect, to romanticize, to ship with someone who wasn't me, and that drove me insane. But here's the cruelest part. While I was drowning in jealousy and self-loathing, my career was on fire in the best possible way, new roles, new endorsements, directors calling me the next big thing, and all I had to do was keep my mouth shut about the one woman who made my world spin, but I couldn't. I sent her texts late at night asking if she was okay, if she'd eaten, if the rumors were true, and she would either ignore me or reply with some cold, dismissive line that cut deeper than silence, and then came that live broadcast. The one that made my blood run cold, because Emily, dressed in perfection like always, suddenly clutched her stomach midstream and retched on camera. Fans flooded the comments with concern, but the haters, the trolls, they tore her apart, saying she was faking it for attention, calling her disgusting, calling her weak, and I couldn't stand it. I wanted to storm into the chat and fight every single one of them, but instead I texted her directly, "If you don't feel well, just end the stream, I'll come pick you up." And you know what she sent back? Just one line, sharp enough to slice me in half. "I suddenly feel like throwing up when I think of you," and I swear my phone almost cracked in half from how hard I threw it across the room, because no matter how much I told myself she didn't mean it, that she was lashing out, it still hurt like hell, because she could have just said she was fine, but she chose to stab me where it hurt most, and yet, hours later, when I dragged myself back to my apartment, she was there, curled up on my couch. Like she owned the place, like nothing had happened, and when I demanded to know if she was trying to kill me with this hot and cold act, she just smirked, walked over, pinned me against the wall with that intoxicating mix of arrogance and sweetness, and whispered, "So you really are mad about this?" Like my rage was nothing more than proof of my love, and damn it, she wasn't wrong, because the moment she touched me, all my anger dissolved into something softer, weaker, and I hated myself for it, hated how even when I listed her crimes, even when I accused her of betraying me, I still wanted to hold her, still wanted to believe her when she swore Ryan was just a childhood friend who needed a ride from the airport, still wanted to forgive her even though every bone in my body screamed she was playing me, but I wasn't the only one losing control. Because that night when her phone rang with news that Ryan had been in a car accident, she didn't hesitate, she grabbed her coat and ran, leaving me behind shouting, "Don't come back after you leave," but she didn't turn around, didn't even flinch, and I sat awake all night staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd already lost her for good. The next morning, Rebecca took one look at my haggard face and chewed me out, told me I looked like a corpse, told me if I didn't get my act together, my rising star would crash and burn, and I promised her I'd hold it together. But deep down I knew I was unraveling, because even when Emily messaged me later, acting like nothing had happened, telling me to wait for her at my place that night, I couldn't decide if I wanted to slam the door in her face or pull her into my arms and never let go, and that contradiction, that love-hate loop, it ate me alive, it made me reckless, it made me bring her to a cocktail party out of spite, only for her to walk in with Ryan at her side, smiling, asking me to help him with resources like I was some networking tool, and that was the first time I realized she wasn't just capable of breaking my heart, she was capable of humiliating me too, so I dragged my childhood friend Sophia Collins into the mess, clinging to her arm in front of Emily like I could somehow hurt her back, like I could make her jealous the way she made me jealous, but all I did was light the fuse of a bigger disaster, because when words were exchanged, when tempers flared, Sophia ended up slapped across the face in front of reporters, and Emily, fearless as she usually was, froze when the cameras turned on her, just for a moment, just long enough for me to see that she wasn't invincible, that under all the arrogance was still the girl who once shivered in a silver dress asking for my coat, and in that split second, I wanted to protect her, but I was too late, the damage was done, the photos were everywhere the next morning, the narrative twisted, and this time I was painted as the villain who dated her, dumped her, dragged another woman into the spotlight, and let Emily Carter spiral. Brands dropped me overnight, my inbox filled with termination notices, and Rebecca told me I was facing millions in penalties. My career was over before it had really begun, and when she asked me what I planned to do, I crushed the beer can in my hand and told her flatly, "I'll pay the penalty and walk away," because at that point I was too tired, too hollow, too destroyed to fight back, and maybe some part of me believed I deserved it for ever thinking I could hold on to someone like Emily Carter. And while the industry celebrated my downfall, Emily disappeared, no texts, no calls, no explanations, she just vanished, taking every trace of warmth with her, and I searched, God knows I searched, airports, flight records, friends, anyone who might know where she went, but it was like she had dissolved into thin air, leaving me with nothing but my regrets, my what-ifs, and the echo of her perfume in my apartment. And that's how the second act of my story ended, not with closure, not with forgiveness, but with me, Ethan Miller, sitting alone in the ruins of my own choices, telling myself it was better this way, that maybe if I focused on Miller Enterprises, if I buried myself in work, I could forget her, I could erase her, I could move on, but I knew the truth, I knew Emily Carter would haunt me no matter how many years passed, no matter how high I climbed, and that one day, whether I was ready or not, fate would put her in front of me again, and when it did, I had no idea if I'd embrace her or burn everything to the ground all over again. Years passed, and people who only saw the headlines thought I had vanished, thought Ethan Miller was another tragic cautionary tale in Hollywood, a shooting star that burned too bright and died too soon, but they didn't know that while the entertainment world turned its back on me, I was quietly dragged back into the orbit of my real legacy, the Miller Enterprises empire, the giant shadow my father had left me, and when he passed away, I was forced to step up, forced to put on the suit, sit in the chair, and run a billion-dollar corporation while trying to bury the ashes of a love that refused to die inside me. I told myself I'd changed, that the old Ethan who chased after Emily Carter like a fool was dead, that I was a sharper, colder man now, a CEO who didn't have time for heartbreak, and for the most part, it was true, because my days were filled with endless meetings, numbers, strategies, and my nights were drowned in expensive whiskey and silence, but even then, even when I convinced myself I was numb, her name was the one thing that could still pierce through me, the ghost of Emily Carter always lingering in the back of my mind, and then one afternoon, while flipping through the proposals my secretary dropped on my desk, I saw it, her name printed clearly on the final page of a business plan, and my pulse skipped like I'd been punched. Because no matter how much I had prepared for this day in the back of my mind, the reality of seeing her name again hit like a truck, and I found myself counting the hours until the meeting, restless, pacing my office like a rookie waiting for his first audition, and when the time came, when I pushed open the door to that conference room, there she was, standing tall at the head of the table, dressed in a white suit and pencil skirt, her hair perfectly framing her face, her voice steady and commanding as she spoke to the executives, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe, because Emily Carter wasn't the same girl I'd once covered in my jacket at a gala. She wasn't the same starlet who teased me until I gave in. She was a woman now, sharp, untouchable, radiating power, and she turned to look at me with that calm, unreadable gaze, extended her hand and said, "Hello, Mr. Miller," like we were strangers meeting for the first time, and it killed me, it burned me from the inside out, but I matched her energy, shook her hand, and forced out a polite smile as I replied, "Hello, Miss Carter, thank you for keeping me waiting." As if my heart wasn't about to implode, the meeting went on with her presenting her ideas with flawless composure, but I barely heard a word, because all I could focus on was the distance in her eyes, the way she spoke to me as if I had never been the man she kissed in the dark, as if our years together had been erased, and when she finished, I didn't even care that the proposal was excellent. I shot it down, saying I wasn't satisfied and asked her to redo it, not because of the plan but because of her, because I wanted to see her again, wanted to keep her tethered to me just a little longer, and when I left the room, my chest ached with the weight of everything unsaid. The next day, I called her back, told her to meet me at Manhattan Tower, and when she arrived late, rushing with documents in hand, I had already ordered her coffee, already prepared to poke at her composure just to see if I could crack it, but she remained calm, professional, almost robotic, and that drove me crazy, because I didn't want a stranger. I wanted the Emily who once laughed into my shoulder, the Emily who made my nights bearable, and yet here she was, sitting across from me like I was nothing more than a client, and the more she pushed me out, the more desperate I became to pull her back in. I invited her to dinner under the guise of discussing the project, but she refused coldly, saying she had other obligations, brushing me off the same way she brushed off tabloids years ago, and it stung more than I wanted to admit, but when she stumbled on her way out, tripping over the table corner and nearly falling, my instincts kicked in. I rushed forward and caught her in my arms, and for a brief moment, I had her close again, close enough to breathe in her familiar perfume, close enough to feel her heartbeat hammering against mine, and I swear time stopped, because that tiny spark of panic in her eyes reminded me that no matter how cold she pretended to be, she wasn't immune to me, not completely. She pulled away quickly, muttered an apology, and tried to leave, but I couldn't let her go like that. So I leaned closer and said softly, "It's safer to talk about the project in person, don't you think, Miss Carter?" And she finally relented, finally agreed, though her tone was clipped, and that tiny victory felt like oxygen to a drowning man. Later that night, over dinner, the facade cracked again, because when I pushed her to drink for the sake of the project, she resisted, citing her stomach, but I remembered, oh God I remembered, the nights I used to shield her from predatory producers. The times I used to fight off vultures who wanted to see her drunk and vulnerable, and the bitterness of those memories flooded me until I couldn't stand it, because all I wanted was to protect her, even now, and yet here we were, sitting across a table, acting like enemies, when Sophia Collins showed up uninvited, her sharp voice cutting through the air. Emily didn't even flinch, she sat there with that icy mask while Sophia tried to stir old wounds, but I shut Sophia down, snapped at her until she left humiliated. And still, Emily didn't look at me, didn't give me the satisfaction of a reaction, and that indifference was worse than any slap, worse than any insult. But then the night spiraled into chaos again, because Emily suddenly collapsed, her lips stained with blood, and I didn't think, I just scooped her into my arms and ran, faster than I've ever moved in my life, praying under my breath as I raced her to the hospital, begging any god who would listen not to take her from me, when the doctors told me it was gastric bleeding. That she'd be okay but needed rest. I sat by her bed all night, watching her pale face, remembering every fight, every kiss, every laugh, and realizing with crushing clarity that I had never stopped loving her, not for a second, no matter how much pride or anger I pretended to have, and when she woke up the next morning and tried to leave like nothing had happened, ripping out her fore and brushing me off, I lost it. I shoved her gently back onto the bed and snapped, "Do you even want to live anymore? Your stomach is wrecked and you're still drinking," my voice trembling with fury and fear, and when she rolled her eyes and muttered something about me being a capitalist bastard, I almost laughed, because even at her weakest, she still had claws, but I softened, begged her to stay for one more injection, coaxed her like I used to, holding her hand, blowing on the spot where the needle pricked, and for a second, I swore I saw the old Emily peek through, the one who used to melt when I caved in to her spoiled antics. But then she disappeared again, literally this time, sneaking out of the hospital while I stepped away, leaving me furious and helpless all over again, because no matter how many times I found her, she always found a way to run, and yet I knew deep down that I wasn't going to let her slip away forever, not again, because this time there was something more, something I hadn't uncovered yet, and I could feel it in my bones, that the story between me and Emily Carter wasn't finished, not even close, and the secret she was hiding was about to change everything. I thought I had already braced myself for every possible twist when it came to Emily Carter, but nothing could have prepared me for the day I discovered her secret, the kind of truth that knocks the breath out of your lungs and leaves you reeling, because after the hospital incident she started avoiding me again, refusing to answer my calls, dodging my meetings, disappearing behind that professional mask of hers. But fate has a sick sense of humor, and one afternoon as I was leaving a project briefing, I saw her in the lobby of Manhattan Tower, her hair tucked under a cap, sunglasses covering half her face, moving quickly like she was running from something, and I might have let her slip past if not for the small voice that called out, "Mom," and I froze, my blood turning to ice, because the little boy who ran up and hugged her legs had the same sharp eyes, the same stubborn frown I used to see in the mirror as a kid, and for a second I honestly couldn't breathe, my world tilting as the truth slammed into me. Emily had a son, and judging by the boy's age, he wasn't just hers, he was mine too, the child she never told me about. I staggered toward them, my voice breaking as I demanded, "Whose kid is this, Emily?" And the boy, innocent and oblivious, looked up at me and said in a sweet baby voice, "That's Uncle Ethan, Mom, he's the one I gave the lollipop to," and Emily's entire face stiffened, her shoulders tense, her lips pressing into a thin line before she muttered, "Of course he's my husband's son," and turned away, but I wasn't buying it, because everything inside me screamed that she was lying, that she was protecting something, and when I looked down at that boy again, Daniel Carter, I felt my chest crack open, because I had never wanted kids before, but in that moment I knew with absolute certainty that he was mine, my blood, my flesh, my missing years come to life, and it made me furious. Not at him, not even fully at Emily, but at the years stolen from me, the memories I should have had but didn't, and as I stood there trembling, I shoved the medicine I had been carrying for her into her arms and told her coldly, "Take it on time," because no matter how betrayed I felt, I still couldn't bring myself to stop caring about her. The days that followed were a blur of obsession. I sent toys to her apartment every day just to test the waters, just to see how she would react. And eventually she snapped, told me to pick them all up because she didn't need charity, but when I showed up and saw the pile of boxes stacked higher than her, I didn't care, because the boy came running to me, calling me Uncle Ethan, and clutching my leg, and for some insane reason I didn't push him away. I didn't feel awkward, instead I felt something close to peace, like this was the way it should have always been, and when he proudly told me his name was Daniel Carter, my suspicions hardened into near certainty, because she had given him her surname, not mine. Another reminder that she had cut me out of a part of my own life. Still, I played along, ruffled his hair, promised him I'd come by again, and when Emily pushed me out the door with that same cold mask, I left, but inside I was boiling, needing answers, needing her to admit the truth. The breaking point came on a team-building trip the company organized, a ridiculous idea to drive out to the wild fields outside the city, but I went because I knew she would be there, and when I saw her shivering in the cold, her thin shirt no match for the wind, I threw my coat over her shoulders without hesitation, ignoring the jealous looks from colleagues, and when a stray dog lunged at us later, she shocked me by pushing me away first, shielding me with her own body even though she could have run, and that single action burned through every layer of bitterness I carried, because if she still had the instinct to protect me, then maybe, just maybe, We weren't as finished as she wanted me to believe, but the tension between us was unbearable, every glance, every touch heavy with things unsaid, and eventually it snapped when we sat in my car afterward, the silence suffocating until I grabbed her wrist, pulled her close, and kissed her like I was drowning, like I could finally breathe if I tasted her again, and though she bit my lip and shoved me off, her flushed cheeks betrayed her, and I knew I wasn't the only one reliving the past. From that day on, I started pushing harder, showing up at her door with food, playing with Daniel whenever I could, refusing to let her wall me out, and one night when I was drunk, I ended up collapsing onto her couch, mumbling into her ear that she had stolen half my life, and when she stiffened but didn't pull away, when her eyes glistened with something more than anger, I knew the ice was cracking. The kiss that followed was fire and destruction rolled into one, years of love and hate spilling out as I held her like I'd never let go again, and though she tried to dismiss it the next morning as just something lonely adults do, I refused to let it be meaningless. I told her she had to take responsibility for me, even joked about being her secret lover if that's what it took, because chasing her, no matter how humiliating, felt better than living without her. What really broke me though wasn't the kiss, wasn't the fights, but the way Daniel crawled into my lap one morning, handed me a piece of his mom's omelet, and said with the innocent conviction of a child, "Uncle Ethan will protect us, right? Nobody will bully us anymore," and I had to look away, swallowing hard, because if it weren't for my pride, my mistakes, that should have been my everyday life, not some stolen moment, and the guilt nearly killed me. But life doesn't let you bask in sweetness for long, because not long after, reporters cornered us outside the company, shouting accusations about Emily stealing me from Sophia years ago, dragging out the old scandal like vultures, and before I could think, I pulled her into my arms and declared loudly for the cameras, "The woman I've loved has always been Emily Carter." It was true then, it's true now, and it will always be true, and the world exploded, media feeding frenzy ignited, but in that moment I didn't care, because for once I had said it openly, no more hiding, no more lies. She looked at me in shock, tears threatening to spill, and just as I thought maybe, just maybe, we were finally finding our way back, the call came, the call that Daniel had fallen down the stairs, hit his head, and was bleeding. Panic surged through me as I drove us to the hospital, Emily sobbing beside me, and when the doctor asked for Rh-negative blood, I stepped forward immediately, but before they could draw from me, Emily stopped them, her face twisted in pain as she said, "Immediate family members can't donate," and in that moment, the last piece clicked, the unspoken truth I had been chasing finally confirmed, and as Ryan Kim rushed in wearing a mask to help, I realized Emily had been hiding my son from me all along. Later, when Daniel was out of danger, I held her trembling body from behind, whispering apologies, confessing that I had been a jealous bastard, begging her to forgive me, and for the first time in years she broke down, sobbing into my chest, all her strength crumbling as she released the weight she had been carrying alone, and I knew then that no matter how much damage we had done, no matter how many years had been stolen, I wasn't going to let her slip away again, because this time I had more than love to fight for. I had a family. I had a son, and nothing in this world was going to take them from me again. After that night in the hospital when Emily finally broke down in my arms, I thought maybe the hardest part was over, that with the truth out in the open we could finally start over, but the reality was messier, because love isn't some magic reset button that erases years of pain, pride, and scars, and every step forward with her felt like stepping onto thin ice, fragile and ready to crack under the weight of our past. I tried though, God knows I tried, showing up with home-cooked meals for her stomach, bringing Daniel little gifts like model cars and books, pretending like we were already a family even if she still looked at me with that cold mask half the time, but under that frost I caught glimpses of the old Emily, the one who would lean back against me on the couch without realizing it, the one who would smile secretly when Daniel called me dad by accident, and every glimpse made me greedy, made me want more, made me desperate to close the distance she still insisted on keeping. I cut back my workload at Miller Enterprises just to have more time with them. I pulled strings quietly to shield her from the worst of the industry sharks, I blocked deals that would have exploited her just like I had years ago, and I told myself I wasn't doing it to make her owe me, I was doing it because I loved her, because protecting Emily Carter was second nature to me even when she swore she didn't need me, but still, she resisted, telling me I couldn't just waltz back into her life. After 4 years and act like nothing happened, telling me Daniel wasn't some trophy to fix what was broken, and those words cut, but I swallowed the pain, because I knew she was right, because part of me was still that cowardly boy who let pride ruin us, and I needed to prove I was different now. What I didn't expect was how fast the outside world would close in once the media got wind of us again. Paparazzi stalking us at every turn, gossip headlines resurrecting the old scandal with Sophia Collins, dragging Emily through the mud like they had years ago, and one night when we stepped out of a dinner meeting, the reporters cornered us, shouting, "Did you steal Ethan from Sophia? Did you ever apologize for the slap at that gala?" And I snapped. I pulled Emily into my arms, stared straight at the cameras and said with my chest, "The only woman I've ever loved is Emily Carter." It was true then, it's true now, and it'll be true in the future, and the world exploded, every outlet running with my declaration, and Emily looked at me like she didn't know whether to hit me or cry, her eyes wide with disbelief. But before we could even process the chaos, her phone rang and her aunt's panicked voice screamed that Daniel had fallen and hit his head, and in that moment nothing else mattered. I drove like a madman to the hospital, clutching Emily's shaking hand the whole way, my own heart climbing into my throat, and when the doctor rushed out asking for Rh-negative blood I didn't hesitate, I volunteered instantly, but Emily stopped me with that pained look, telling the doctor immediate family couldn't donate, and when Ryan Kim arrived out of nowhere to help, I almost lost it, but the relief of Daniel pulling through was stronger than my jealousy, and when that boy opened his eyes hours later and whispered weakly, "Mom, can Dad come see me?" I thought my chest would burst, because Emily stroked his hair and pushed me forward, saying softly, "Baby, Dad is always by your side, Uncle Ethan is your dad," and in that moment I couldn't even speak, I just held his little hand and promised over and over that I wasn't going anywhere again, that I would protect them both no matter what. After that night, something shifted between us. Emily stopped pretending I was just some nuisance hanging around, she let me stay at her place more often. Sometimes even cooking breakfast together like we were a normal couple, and Daniel, God, that kid clung to me like he'd been waiting his whole life to say the word, Dad, and every time he did my throat tightened because I realized how much I'd missed, how much Emily had carried alone, and my guilt nearly drowned me, but I didn't run from it this time, I used it as fuel. I told myself I'd make it up to both of them no matter how long it took, but if the world gave us one step forward, it also shoved us 2 steps back, because not everyone wanted to see us happy. Sophia resurfaced like a vulture, hinting to tabloids that Emily was still a manipulative woman who had stolen me once and would do it again. Business rivals whispered that I was letting my feelings interfere with Miller Enterprises, and investors questioned my judgment, and I'll admit, the pressure was suffocating. But when I saw Emily standing in the kitchen late at night in her pajamas, cutting fruit for Daniel with her messy hair falling into her face, I knew I'd burn the whole world down before I let anyone take this from me again. Still, Emily wasn't easy to win back. She reminded me constantly that even though she forgave me, trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, that love couldn't erase the loneliness she endured when I wasn't there, and sometimes I saw the doubt in her eyes when Ryan's name came up. But I didn't let it break me this time. I fought, I stayed, I endured every cold word. Because I knew part 6 of our story wasn't about running anymore, it was about proving that a broken mirror could shine again, that a man who once chose pride could now choose love, and I swore to myself I wouldn't stop until Emily Carter and Daniel Carter were truly mine, not just in name, but in every sense that mattered. If part 5 was about clawing my way back into Emily Carter's life, then part 6 was about proving to her and to the entire damn world that I was never going to leave again, because words were cheap and promises had been broken before, but actions, relentless actions, were the only thing that mattered now, and I knew she was watching me carefully, testing me, waiting to see if I'd crack under the same pressures that destroyed us 4 years ago, but this time I didn't waver, not when Sophia Collins tried to stir more scandals by leaking old photos, not when investors whispered that I was blinded by love, not even when anonymous tabloids threw mud at Emily for being a single mother, because instead of hiding, instead of letting her stand in the storm alone, I stepped in front of the cameras with her hand in mine and told every reporter bold enough to ask that yes, Emily Carter was the woman I loved, yes, Daniel was my son, and yes, I'd choose them 1,000 times over my so-called reputation, and the backlash was immediate, but so was the support, because the truth is, People may love to gossip about broken hearts, but they love redemption even more, and the narrative slowly shifted from scandal to second-chance love story, from shame to strength, and I could see it in Emily's eyes when she scrolled through the comments, the way her lips trembled when she saw strangers defending her instead of tearing her down, the way she looked at me like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the coward she remembered, maybe I was finally the man she needed. Still, the hardest battle wasn't with the outside world, it was with her trust, and rebuilding it meant swallowing my pride every time she doubted me, every time she tested me, like the night she snapped that I was only here because of Daniel, that if not for him I would have kept living my billionaire CEO life without looking back, and as much as it cut. I didn't walk away, I held her face in my hands and told her flat out. You're wrong, Emily, I loved you before I knew Daniel existed, and I'll love you long after he's grown, with or without a child, it was always you, and I watched her eyes fill with tears. She tried to blink away, and for the first time, she didn't argue back. Daniel became our bridge, that little boy who lit up every room, who laughed when I carried him on my shoulders, who pouted when Emily scolded me for sneaking him candy, who once whispered when he thought we were asleep, Dad, don't make Mom cry anymore, and that single line nearly broke me, because if even he could see the scars I left, then I had to do better, I had to be better, and I meant it when I knelt beside his bed and promised, I won't, buddy, not ever again. The turning point came during a charity gala where Emily had to perform, a night designed to remind the world of her star power, and I sat in the audience with Daniel on my lap, watching as she stepped onto the stage in a midnight gown, her voice steady, her beauty undeniable, and in that moment I realized she wasn't just the woman I loved, she was also a queen who had survived everything, and I felt proud, fiercely proud, but also terrified, because I knew this industry could still eat her alive if she stood alone. So when reporters swarmed her after the performance with the same tired questions about our past, I didn't hesitate, I wrapped an arm around her waist, looked straight into the flashing lights, and said, we've both made mistakes, but none of that changes the fact that Emily Carter is my family, she's the mother of my son, and from now on if anyone wants to hurt her, they'll have to go through me first. And the headlines the next morning weren't about scandals, they were about loyalty, about love, about Ethan Miller finally choosing his family, and for once, I didn't feel like I was acting, I felt like I was living honestly. After that, the walls she built began to crumble faster, and one night when Daniel was already asleep, I found her on the balcony, staring out at the city lights, her arms wrapped around herself like she was still carrying the weight of the world, and I walked up behind her, slipped my arms around her waist, rested my chin on her shoulder, and whispered, I know I can't erase the past, Emily, but give me the chance to build a future with you. And she turned, her eyes glossy, her lips trembling, and for the first time in years she said the words I thought I'd never hear again, I missed you, Ethan, before burying her face in my chest, and I held her so tight I thought she might vanish if I loosened my grip. From then on, we weren't perfect, we still argued, we still clashed, but the difference was we fought as partners, not enemies, we leaned on each other instead of tearing each other apart, and when Daniel started introducing me at school events as, my dad, and Emily didn't correct him, I knew we had finally crossed the line from broken to whole. The last test came when Sophia tried one final stunt, cornering Emily at a press event, and sneering that a broken mirror can never be repaired, and Emily, without missing a beat, smiled coolly and said, maybe not, but even broken glass can shine brighter than before, and then she reached for my hand in front of everyone, interlocking her fingers with mine like it was the most natural thing in the world, and in that moment I knew we had won, not just against Sophia, not just against the industry, but against our own pride and demons. That night, as I tucked Daniel into bed and watched him sleep peacefully, I realized that this was what it meant to have everything, not the fame, not the money, but a family, a love resurrected, a son who trusted me to be his hero. And when I crawled into bed beside Emily, her head resting on my chest, her hand over my heart, I whispered the vow I should have made years ago, I love you, Emily. It was true in the past, it's true now, and it will be true forever. And for the first time in years, she whispered it back without hesitation, sealing the ending we both deserved, an ending that wasn't really an ending at all, but the beginning of the life we almost lost and finally found again.